All right. Excuse me. Welcome back to the 2020 P2P Pro Draft. We're getting kicked up at number 17 here with the Rams. They made a trade with the Browns to move up a little bit in the first round and go after the player they wanted to get. So curious who that player is, and we'll find out here in just a second. Really hard to say. I don't think they really need a QB, so I'm not expecting FREDERICK to come off the board right now, but I've been surprised before. So without further ado, let's find out what the Rams went with here. So looks like they're going with a tackle, Richard Porter. Let's take a look at him. So decent strength. He's just really going to have to improve his pass and run blocking is the only thing. But he's got the intangibles to do that. So he's got the work ethic, competitiveness, leadership, all that to be able to pull it off. He's out of Virginia Tech, which is an AI-controlled team, so we don't have a lot of press on him, but he does have the strength. He'll develop. He's only 22, big, tall guy, 6'7", pretty lean too, and he's smart. So that's a decent tackle. That's really just going to have to improve on his blocking skills, but with that strength, that's the most important thing at the tackle position. So with that strength, he very well will be playing well into the future, at least for the next 5 seasons with the Rams. So be interesting to see how they utilize him, especially rookie year. So let's see, Richard Porter. We'll take a look at his ratings from. Oh, maybe we won't. Am I spelling something wrong here? Yeah, so there's no Porters on. It's interesting that some of these guys just don't have cards for the college game. So, fortunately, we can't really take much of a look at Porter and his college career because I can't find a player card for him. So, we'll move on to number 18, and that puts the Packers on the board. This, I believe they had another pick, or maybe I'm mistaken, but let's take a look here. Draft recap. Did they pick already? No, they didn't. This is their first pick of the draft. So let's take a look at what they decide to go with number 18. So FREDERICK finally coming off the board. He's a QB out of Oregon. He had a good career over there. He better have a card too. Oh, I understand why I didn't see Porter. I hadn't clicked all players, and now it's going to just give me some guff. So FREDERICK was great over at Oregon. I believe he started for 4 years. Oregon's been an up-and-coming program, and he's kind of led that catalyst a little bit. So I'm excited, honestly, to see him perform and see how Green Bay utilizes him. They did take what's his name last year? Edgar FREDERICK. They took the Boston College guy last season, so Dortch, and looks like they just want a little bit of insurance. And FREDERICK's not a bad prospect, honestly. Look at that speed and agility. He's not the smartest guy, and his intangibles are a little bit suspect, especially in the competitiveness department. But he's got the arm accuracy, and that intelligence likely will come up with some coaching. So I think that's a great pick. I kind of expected him to go higher. I thought he was kind of one of the better looking QBs in the draft. We did have Rodney Peterson go earlier. It's hard to say who I'd prefer. Peterson only had 81 arm, and as I've said countless times, I love arm. But Frederick's intelligence is a little bit suspect, but he knows how to play the position. He's got great endurance, speed, and agility, so he's going to be able to move in the pocket pretty well. And I think that's a pretty good pickup for. Or we're looking at his ratings in college. I'm like, wow, yeah, look at this guy. He's awesome. But he performed well with these ratings. So as we see, he started all 4 years. He increased his completion percentage over his time, dipped down. I mean, he was a good QB. He was fantastic at Oregon. So let's see how he rated out in the pro game before I go too crazy talking about his great ratings from college. And it looks like it transitioned over pretty well, lost a little bit of his speed and agility. Intelligence stayed the same. His arm and accuracy dipped a little bit, but that's a solid guy. I mean, he doesn't look too much worse than he looked in college, and he did well at Oregon. Oregon never played in the playoffs or anything, but he was a solid player for a solid program in the Pac-12. So good pickup for Green Bay. Hopefully, I don't know what that means for Dortch over there, but Frederick looks pretty good. Especially, he's really all he's got to do is pump that intelligence up. So his ability to move around in the pocket will kind of be affected, though, by his hands. If he takes hits, he's probably going to fumble. 4 hands is pretty low for a QB. 10 or above or like 15, that's pretty good for a quarterback, which means they'll fumble a lot less if they take hits. But Frederick, decent pickup for sure, especially all the way down here at number 18. So he was expected to go top 10, so number 18, that's a decent drop, and Green Bay got their guy. So excellent, and we'll move on to Denver after that. So let's see who they take. So we got Bostic, and Bostic is out of Texas. So I wonder how much he played for Rizzo over there, because I don't remember catching his name very often. But he's a quick guy. His agility is going to need to come up a little bit, but he's got nice hands. His endurance isn't the best, but, man, if he can get those hands up to like 72, he's your third down back right away. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He's got great work ethic, so I expect him to develop. He's not the most competitive, so you might see him, not quite do what he should in clutch situations, but that speed's incredible. If he can get that agility up, strength's pretty decent for a running back. Like I said yesterday, most running backs coming in are going to be somewhere between 50 and 70 strength. So a speedy guy with 62 strength, that's a little bit above the average. You'll see some power guys as well. I think we saw the guy out of FSU, McLean. I think he was up at like 79 strength or something. So, but his speed was a little bit lower. So he's like 83 agility, 83 speed, and then he was like 69 or 70 or maybe a little higher on his strength. So Bostic looks good. Let's take a look at his college career, because I'm really curious. Really curious about him. Let's see. Bostic out of Texas. So, yeah, he played a lot. He didn't have a ton of stats. He was probably in a platoon. I mean, that looks obvious. He started some games, so it looks like he was kind of the alternate back, but he looks pretty decent. His average per carry went down year by year, but overall, pretty good player. His agility definitely dipped a lot coming over to the pro game, that's for sure. And his endurance dipped a little bit too, but still looks solid. He kept that speed, and he kept that strength. That converted over well. So, like I said, solid pickup, solid intangibles. He should be a good player for the the Broncos. So that brings us to Houston. See who Houston takes with their first round pick. This is their first pick. It's an AI pick. Let's see. So they're taking Eric Cruz, free safety. He was a guy I was kind of scouting before, so he's out of Arizona State. So Wire Forest will probably be stoked about that, and he looks pretty decent. Good speed and agility, 84, 82. I like to see that. And that likely will come up. He's got to learn the position a little bit, but this guy is a candidate that could be moved to corner. He's got that endurance. His hands aren't the best. He's going to be a good tackler, and that strength is great for a DB. I mean, you get a DB with 50 strength. That's pretty awesome. So his intangibles are a little bit average, but solid player, I'd say, in a DB-heavy draft. He's definitely looks pretty good. He's a guy that I actually think he was slated to go late in the first round or early second round, and I mean he looks about like a lot of the DBs that have been picked earlier in the draft. So that's a good pickup for the Texans. For Cruz, Arizona State. Let's go take a look at his college career. Eric Cruz. So, yeah, he was a good player. He was a little bit slow. It's intriguing to me to see that his speed came up. So, he must have had like a good pro day or something, because his speed increased from where it was at in college. His agility went down, his strength went down, but overall solid player. I expect he started all 4 seasons. Yeah, he did, and he played pretty well. Decent pass defenses, sacks, got some INTs with his high water mark being 5 in 2018. So he's got a couple defensive touchdowns as well. So that's a guy maybe that could get used in the return game as well. But interesting player nonetheless for Wire Forest's Arizona State team, and he'll be kind of headed over to Texas, so he's staying down south, not too far from home. So yeah, good pick. On to the Falcons, another AI team. Let's see who they take here. So they're going with Todd Jones, another free safety, and he looks pretty good too. His endurance is a little bit suspect, but similar, 80-80, so he's got that 83 speed, 81 agility. He's got a little bit better strength. His intangibles are good. He's really just going to have to work on his endurance to be able to play late in games, with a lot of snaps. And he's out of Florida, so that's back-to-back. Wire Forest also controls Florida, so that's 2 of Wire Forest's guys coming off the board back-to-back. Todd Jones looks like a solid pickup to me. Decent DB. Let's look how he did in college. Todd Jones, and he's only 21, so Florida, he started half his games his junior year and all of his games his senior year. Played pretty well. Pass defenses, had a couple picks, decent tackles, was able to limit guys. I usually like DBs that hold guys under 50% completion, but safeties often, they'll often allow a higher percentage than like your corners will. But 13 out of 34, a lot of potential for Jones. I think he'll be a pretty good player over there for the Falcons. So that takes us to the Chiefs, which is another AI team. Let's see who they go with. So we got Sandlin. Brett Sandlin, linebacker out of Washington, which is going to be Jedi's team, but he leaves a lot to be desired. Casey, that kind of might have been a little bit of reach, but he's got time to develop. He's only 21. His strength's decent. It's just I want to see all of these, tackling, speed, agility go up above 70. And obviously he's going to have to work on endurance a little bit as well, but he could develop. He's young. He probably had a pretty good career. Washington hasn't been the best, but, he's got to be enjoying getting picked this high in the first round. So Brett Sandlin, so out of Washington, so he started all his games and then didn't start his senior year. So it's kind of surprising. He came in as a 400 level recruit, but yeah, his playing time diminished over time, but he's still looked at as a pro prospect. Let's see. Yeah, he probably just was a little bit slow in college to play the linebacker position. This is a guy, like I was talking about yesterday, there's a lot of guys that I'll convert to end, and he would have been a candidate for me in college to get converted to end just because his speed, it's not quite where I like it for linebacker, but his strength is decent and his size. So he's 227, and 69 strength. So that's a candidate, that I would consider moving to end, but I only like moving those guys to end if they have above 80 speed, because then you get that quick kind of speed edge rusher. But Sandlin, I mean, maybe a little bit of a reach for that pick, but possible to develop and improve. So that brings us to the Bills. Let's see who they take. So we got Hopkins, defensive end out of Auburn. Good strength and speed. His agility's pretty bad, so he's going to have to work on that. He's going to have to work on his position skill and obviously his endurance. But he's got the speed and strength to play if he can improve those. The nice thing about, when you do the athletic training, agility's a lot easier to train than speed. So that's not a horrible situation, but he's really going to have to improve that. I'd want to see that up around 50 and improve his strength maybe just a little bit, just because he's not super duper fast. But if he can get that agility going, he'll be a solid player for the Bills. He's 22. He's got good size, 6'5", 284. So a little bit lean, but Hopkins out of Auburn, and Auburn historically has been a good program. So let's take a look at his college career before we move on to my team. And I have no idea who the heck they're going to take because I just let the AI run my draft. But so Kim Hopkins, defensive end. Yeah, so he had that suspect agility in college. Let's see if that really limited his performance. Looks like he got hurt his senior year and only got to play in 5 games. He had 7 sacks his junior year, 8 tackles for loss. But he did miss a lot of tackles, and I betting that's predicated on his slower agility. So he's reaching for guys, trying to keep up with them. But yeah, in college, this looks like a pretty solid D end. Just an edge rusher. Just put the hands back and go get the QB, straight line runner. But yeah, solid pickup. We're gonna move that on to my team. Hopefully they don't screw this up. So let's see. We get Kaiser here. So Kevin Kaiser. He's a running back out of Texas. So picking up another Rizzo's guys. Decent speed and agility. Probably want that to come up a little bit. His endurance is a little bit suspect, but after losing our top 2 running backs this past season, we really had a lot of need for running back, and I've been having trouble signing any free agents as well. So it'll be nice to have some new blood in the backfield for Washington. Decent enough speed, decent enough agility. Let's go see how he did in college. So Kevin Kaiser out of Texas. Not Kaiser. So let's see how did Rizzo utilize him. Man, he didn't even play. So he played a lot and then didn't play at all his senior season. So must have got benched for some reason, but it's surprising because he had 3 seasons where he was averaging, 6.3 per carry, and then he sustained that with a lot of carries. So 32 carries, you're like, okay, 6.3, but then he sustained that, kept it at 5.8, and then just got benched his senior year. So that's unfortunate for him, but we'll do our best to utilize him, over here in Washington. He really dipped in his endurance. His agility took a pretty big dip, and his strength a little bit when converting over to pro. But I'm excited enough for him. I think he'll develop. I think he'll be a solid player for us. I mean, he's probably going to. He might even end up like second string this next season, just because we can't seem to sign any running backs. But so anyway, this takes us to the pick swap. The Browns and Rams swapped picks, so the Rams moved up and then the Browns moved down to this pick down here at 25. So let's see who they take in the draft here, which I think this is their second or third pick, or second pick of the first round. So they're taking Corcoran, defensive end out of Miami, Florida. Good enough strength for sure. His speed's a little bit low. He's got the intangibles, knows how to play the position. Endurance, you want to push up a little bit, but decent enough player at the end. We'll just have to get really, his strength's good enough, especially with that size, 295 pounds. His strength's good enough, so if he gets some athletic training on him, pushes up that speed and agility, he'll be a pretty solid guy. But you're probably gonna utilize him more, just kind of a hole clogger at this point. And then if you coupled him, for example, with a faster linebacker, he can hold some blocks and take up some guys while the linebacker kind of moves up and gets the tackle. So solid pick, good enough strength, and this guy will develop, and he doesn't really seem to have any suspect personality issues or anything like that. So, and he likes security, so he likes winning, loyalty, money a little bit. Interesting. So that brings us to Carolina, and this is a new GM, Satoro, that just joined the league pretty recently, I think like last week or the week before. So here he goes with his first pick in our league here. So let's see who the Panthers take. We've got Steven Stewart, who is a tackle out of Nebraska, and Nebraska was a playoff team last season. This guy bodes pretty well, especially if you're developing a passing style offense. He's got the pass blocking. He's got the endurance to play late into games. His speed and agility is not bad for a lineman. He's just going to want to pick up that strength. So if he can get that strength up to, 80, 82, 83, that's a solid player for you. Probably a right tackle. He's only 21 years old, so he'll be able to push it up and develop. And I like this pick, honestly. Even though his strength's a little bit low, I do like this pick at 26 with the Panthers, and so that'll give some help to protect John Bell over there in Carolina. And let's see, as I said, Nebraska, They went to the playoffs last year. There was a little bit of controversy. A lot of folks felt like Kentucky should have been in over them, and they got summarily destroyed by Utah in their first round game. So it had a lot of people speculating that they didn't belong in the playoff last season, but I imagine he was a 4-year starter. Yeah, it looks like he started a decent amount of games. Maybe got hurt, but that's a decent amount of pancakes for him. Last season, his senior year, and that probably bought him a ticket to getting drafted. But, he does look like, if I'm evaluating this player card right here, he's a guy that I would expect to translate pretty well to the pro game, just because he's got really high pass blocking, really high strength. So even if he has some losses in that department, they're not super detrimental. He's got the work ethic to develop, so I think that's a pretty good pick. I definitely like this guy, this tackle for Carolina at the 26th pick. So that takes us to the Bengals. Let's see who they take. So they're going McKeever. He's a corner out of, and it's going to give me this weird glitch that I hate that doesn't like to give me the info about the player. And McKeever, he's a little bit of a surprise out of Virginia. He's going higher than I expected. Maybe because he's a little bit older and has less time to develop. But I honestly didn't expect him to be this good. Good hands, speed and agility's good. He'll have to work on his endurance and position skill. His work ethic and competitiveness is a little bit suspect. That's another position I like to have high competitiveness, is the cornerback position. Because they're competing on every play. I mean, I guess everybody's kind of competing on every play, but I feel like it gives them a little bit extra on a contested ball or something like that. So solid pickup for corner, and this has really been a corner heavy draft. Let's go see how McKeever did at Virginia, what his career looked like, as long as I remember how to spell. So MCK McKeever. So he was a solid player. Interesting regarding his agility. So his agility, he's another guy. It looks like he started and played a lot. Looks like I lost a connection there for a second. But he started and played quite a lot for Virginia. Probably moved over to the nickel corner position there. But, he has really good, catch to target ratios, decent passes defense, decent tackles. He missed a fair amount of tackles, but I still think that's a pretty solid player, and frankly, it surprises me. I didn't expect him to quite be that good. So that makes that a pretty solid pickup for the Bengals, and that takes us to the Colts and Wire Forest. He had a couple players taken earlier in the round from his college teams, both Florida and Arizona State, but that moves us to his pro team, the Colts, and let's see who he ends up taking. So we're going to go Wayne Anderson. He is a center out of South Florida, so that's an AI team in college. And his strength, pass blocking, run blocking, all looks decent enough. His endurance will come up, being that he's got good work ethic, decent enough work ethic. He'll be a solid locker room guy. His agility's nice, so he can kind of move around a little bit. He might be a candidate to try, getting some training at guard or tackle, just because he's got that lateral movement with his agility, and his speed's not anything to sneeze at for a lineman. It's about average speed at 46. But definitely a solid pickup at center. Wayne Anderson out of South Florida, and he's only 21 years old, so he will be pretty solid for Indy, I expect. Let's take a look at his college career. I feel like this happened already. Wayne Anderson doesn't like to find these guys. So it's almost like some of these guys from AI teams just get, like, their player cards just disappear. So we don't have a card for Wayne Anderson, but we'll move on to the Jags, who've really been the surprising AI team of the league. Like, they perform really, really well. Get in the playoffs. They had an MVP candidate in their quarterback, and they have like a string of quarterbacks that they seem to alternate every season, getting the starting nod, and it doesn't lead to much of a downturn in performance from any of them. But let's see if they keep on succeeding in the draft as well. So they're taking Eric Guffey out of Cincinnati. He's a linebacker. Kind of similar to other linebackers we've seen. He's got nice endurance. He can tackle well, but he's going to have to improve his speed and agility, at least get up above 70 before I'd really utilize him, and then get that position training as well. But his size is decent at 250, so definitely an all right player, and Cincinnati's been an annual great program in the college league as well. So let's see, Guffey. And that's Eric Guffey, linebacker, right? Say E. Guffey, yeah. So Eric Guffey, Cincinnati, he played pretty well. He dipped down, so he looks similar to kind of how he did in college, like definitely a decent conversion of his college ratings, but a little under. He was kind of marginal in my department in terms of the speed and agility. In the college game, I pretty much don't play any linebackers that have below 80 speed, so that would have made him a suspect prospect for me in the draft. But hey, it's AI, and maybe they'll turn him into some part of their magic machine they have over there in Jacksonville. So that moves us on to the Lions with pick 30. Let's see who they take. Board. Man, this has been quite the DB draft, I gotta say. But I will say there were a lot of DBs in the file, a lot of decent guys from decent schools coming out. So not incredibly surprised to see some good cornerbacks. But here's another one, Robert Pina, decent enough strength. Endurance is good. He's got training at both cornerback and free safety. So the nice part about that is, like, say you're trying to convert a drafted corner to free safety and he doesn't have any training at free safety. Well, if you list him at free safety and put him through training camp, all of his training is going to go toward that position skill his first season. So it's nice to have the option and be able to kind of play with him a little bit, and think about either position for him and not lose, can still focus on training his actual physical attributes instead of worrying about losing one training camp to just position skill, which is what happens when you convert a player. So training in both spots, good player, good endurance, and he's out of that championship Baylor team. They won last year, so I'm curious how well he did. Pina out of Baylor. And what is that? Robert Pina? Yeah. Okay. So Robert Pina. And how was he? Oh my gosh, yeah, he was a freaking whiz in college. 98 overall. That's pretty stellar. 86, 85. So he would be more predicated based on that to sticking to free safety, excuse me, to moving to corner in my system. Like I was saying yesterday, I kind of end up moving my faster player to free safety at DB if there is any question. But solid guy, and his speed and agility converted over pretty well. So decent pickup for sure at number 30 for the Lions. So that takes us to our AFC championship AFC champion from last year, the Dolphins. Let's see who they take. So we got Christopher Goodwin out of Oklahoma. Decent, solid guy, I'd say. For sure, speed and agility's good enough. I mean, I'd want to pick it up a little bit. I like to have a guy, somewhere around 90-90, but I'd be happy with like a, 90-83 or 90-82. So if he can pick that speed up a little bit, he'll be pretty solid because he's not quite where you'd want him to be a power back. He's got, like the guy at FSU that was taking McLean has higher strength and similar speed and agility. But if he can push that strength up to 70 and maybe, get a few ticks on his speed, he'll be a solid player. He's got the endurance to do it. And Oklahoma has fallen off the last few seasons, but they're not a terrible program by any means. So that moves us to, let's see, Christopher Goodwin. Let's go look at his college career. Goodwin. So, yeah, he was a great player in college. Definitely decent speed and agility. Looks like he started and played a lot over there. Increased his per carry every season. He caught a lot of passes his senior year, so that's interesting. Let's go look at his hands. So his hands are a little bit low in the pro game, but maybe that tells me that they'll develop because, he was at a 73 in college, which I'd definitely be using this guy out of the backfield a ton in college, and that strength was awesome in college. So it's kind of a bummer it didn't quite convert as well because that 88, 89, 81, that's pretty stellar for a running back. But anyway, let's move on to our final pick of today's show, which is our Super Bowl champion Cowboys. Let's see who they take and go with, let's see. So Michael Harris, defensive end out of Oregon. So that's a second Oregon player picked in the first round. Pretty decent guy. Kind of similar knock. He's going to want to push his speed and agility up a little bit. Knows how to play the position. Has awesome intangibles. His endurance is decent enough to really play a lot at this level. But let's go see how he did in college. Michael Harris. So, is we looking at the same guy? Huh. So was that guy out of Oregon? This Michael Harris? No, he wasn't. So this is a different Michael Harris. So it's another guy that just doesn't end up with the card, which is kind of strange. I'm not sure why, but anyway, solid pick to conclude our first round of action. So appreciate you tuning into the show, and we'll be back tomorrow for another